We are at 5:01. So, Dr. Robbie, if you'd like to kick us off with your opening remarks, that would be great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Mask Together America meeting tonight. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Dr. Robbie Tamargo. I am a Mask Together Long COVID advisor, and I want to welcome all of our guest speakers who are here today to educate us about long COVID. As a clinical psychologist and a neuro-long COVID specialist, I am excited about our long COVID defense series that our founder, Julie Lamb, and her tremendous team all across the United States who have initiated to support long haulers and helping caretakers and allies who are fighting against the potential erasure of this concept of long COVID. So Mask Together America is a volunteer organization that launched a social media campaign in 2020. We raise awareness about preventable respiratory infection and advocate for prevention. Our platform features people from all walks of life, from all over the world, who bravely join us in advocating for prevention that is best with the layered approach. Many long COVID patients have shared their stories on our platform in the last 5 years. I encourage you to come and check it out. We are not out of the woods with SARS-CoV-2. Every infection can lead to the development of chronic illnesses that affect our brain, heart, kidney, lungs, blood vessels, our precious immune system, and really all of our organ systems. We speak out for those who can't. We are trying to protect patients from abandonment, and we must prevent long COVID by taking precautions. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to introduce Sarah Cahill, who will be hosting our event. As a long hauler myself, I am grateful for the teamwork that I've received from everyone on this team. So let's start our forum by clapping for these tremendous organizers that have put this together.
Thank you, Dr. Robbie. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to be your host and MC tonight. So I will be introducing the speakers and kind of feeding them questions, and then we will get some great answers from them on our Long COVID Defense Series 1. So our first speaker tonight is Solenn Tanguy, President of Winslow Santé Publique, a long COVID advocacy group in France. Solenn Tanguy, President of Winslow Santé Publique, is a civil society expert and former professor of economics and social sciences in France. Winslow Santé Publique is composed of people living with long COVID and their allies, fighting against COVID misinformation and erasure, and advocating for prevention, cures, and preventative treatments. Beyond their personal stories, they see COVID as a political issue. During the first wave, Solenn, then 39, now 45, contracted COVID and developed long COVID with pulmonary embolisms, cardiovascular, autoimmune, and neurological issues. She was bedbound at the beginning. When she began feeling a bit better, she co-founded Winslow Santé Publique with others fighting for COVID safety and education. There was a huge gap between what COVID was to people living with it and what it was to authorities in charge of public health, how it was perceived by the public, and how it was described in scientific publications. These gaps are a threat to public health. Solenn's long COVID advocacy group focuses on the etiology and prevention of long COVID. They believe that what can kill and handicap so many will not leave others unscathed, even among those who seem to have been spared. So thank you, Solenn, for being here. Our first question for the evening is, what is long COVID to you?
Long COVID for me is a direct result of SARS-CoV-2 infection, which is a vascular virus. COVID illness has two phases, the acute phase, the initial infection, and the chronic phase, driven by some mechanisms such as viral persistence, thromboinflammation, and disimmunity, autoimmunity, etc. But it's important to say that organ damage can be totally part of this chronic phase. It's often attributed only on the acute phase, and in reality, chronic damage occurs and must be acknowledged. Clots, kidney damage, heart damage. And moreover, studying patients with obvious chronic organ damage can provide insights to disease mechanisms that may be subclinical for others. The scope of long COVID encompasses, for me, all medical sequelae or chronic symptoms caused by the virus. For example, autoimmune disease, pulmonary or cardiovascular problems, cognitive impairment, or brain damage, post-exertional malaise, digestive issues, immunodeficiency, etc. All these people with these diverse problems have long COVID and continue to have it. The symptoms seem diverse, but they can accumulate, and they only make sense when connected to the cause. And that's why for us, the etiology of the disease is very important. Some damage is specific to COVID. For example, clots. It's a pre-existing issue to the pandemic. People had clots before, but the inflammatory fibrin may differ from pre-pandemic conditions. Same with autoimmune conditions. Some disorders are shaped by COVID. Myocarditis in long COVID may reflect necrosis and microvascular process more than classical inflammation. So what I mean is that pre-existing conditions may be reshaped by SARS-CoV-2 and may even need specific different treatment approaches. That's why we focus again on the virus. There's no hallmark of long COVID except a prior COVID infection. And it's a chronic evolving conditions with strong vascular involvement. Each manifestation can be debilitating, dangerous, or fatal for some. I insist on this because having lived the first wave and the situation of chaos it was, I bet a lot of people have died without even knowing what was happening to them. And it makes me sad to see the invisibility of the horror they may have experienced. So today, I fear that some deadly complications tend to be excluded from the definition of long COVID. And I think it endangers people and it normalizes the pandemic. So that's how I see long COVID.
Thank you. HIV and AIDS patients need patient-led grassroots movements to fight for government responses and research funding. Does that mean we need to do the same for long COVID?
Yeah, in Winslow, we are long COVID patients and allies, and we describe ourselves as fighting against the epidemic of COVID. One of our strongest motivation has been witnessing the enormous level of ignorance among the public and misinformation from other parts, including institutions sometimes, often even. We like to say ignorance is not a public health policy. And we think that bad policies are accepted because people don't understand what long COVID really is. And, well, for example, they don't even know that COVID itself is vascular, you know. So we fight against long COVID through the prisma of the ongoing pandemic, and we cannot separate the two. And we have an advisor, her name is Gwen Fauchois, and she is the former president of ACT UP Paris in the 80s. And at a conference we organized, she said, burying an epidemic means first burying people, slowly or invisibly by long COVID, but also literally dozens of people every day in almost complete indifference. So that's one of our tasks, making dying people and sick people visible. And I'll develop this a bit, this part a bit, because HIV/AIDS has shown us some lessons, because what AIDS fighters had achieved was made possible because they succeeded in convincing people that their deaths were unacceptable. And with COVID, we are facing the opposite. Society has normalized preventable deaths, and therefore chronic illness and disability too. So, daily death tolls in 2020, 2021 have become routine, and people has accepted these burdens, and they have finally categorized the people that died of it into vulnerable and categorized themselves in invulnerable. So we have some big challenge here, and the situation is not the same as HIV, but we can learn from what they have done. We have seen that our government in France was likely to choose a spokesperson that won't link long COVID to infection so much. And we think it's because it legitimizes their irresponsibility of those in power. So we think that we have to be careful of this. And that's also what the fighters of HIV/AIDS have learned. We also realized quickly that we would be alone in this fight. I think it's the same for you. Lessons from immunosuppressed people were clear too, because after their initial protection, they were left alone very quickly. And now long COVID patients face the same pressure of well-meaning people that are, I quote because we wrote this in the text, whispering in their ears in the name of their dignity and their best interest that they should follow the example of their less vocal peers. Don't shout too loudly. And that's something that has happened before too. So we want to create something different to challenge the authorities, not only on social media, but in advocacy, showing the importance of defending prevention as the foundation of any serious response to long COVID. Without prevention, we think we achieve nothing. For the moment, it remains our best treatment, I think. And the financial investment that is needed will come if we demonstrate that we take long COVID seriously and that we protect children and the future generation.
So learning from activism surrounding other infectious diseases, including AIDS, what's needed to counter stigmatization, systematic inequalities, and misinformation on long COVID?
First, learning and self-education. We first had to educate ourselves to build some legitimacy. We collected studies, analyzed them, resisted fake medicine, and we had to construct our own tools, like we mapped devices to improve access to effective testing plus live testing, created informative videos exposing scientifically false claims in public campaigns, things like this. We initiated two legal proceedings. One is ongoing to reinstate the free PCR testing. And through this work, we realized we often understood the phenomenon that were happening better than the government, whether in its acute or chronic phase. And the limited knowledge among many officials was very worrying. So every day we learn to select important studies and construct scientific knowledge. For instance, before a protest in front of the French Heart Society recently, we compiled all relevant cardiology studies to support our advocacy letter before doing the protest, things like this. So that's one of the big things that we have to do. And we have learned that we have to target doctors and media. Why? Because they can pressure institutions to fund long COVID research and care and prevention. For doctors, we have to use the tools of the trust problem. There's a fracture between them and us in France. The trust is lost. There is something that needs to be repaired here. It's difficult trusting a doctor that didn't inform itself about airborne transmission of COVID for 6 years in an airborne pandemic that killed millions of people. That's difficult when a doctor comes to me asking to remove my mask and saying, I won't touch you, don't worry, things like this. I doubt, in fact, of this aptitude to take the good medical decisions for me. And we have seen many, many absurd situations. It creates a fracture of trust. And I think it has been the same for some uninformed people that were thinking they were safe with a surgical wound unilaterally, a lot of fractures to be repaired. It's very difficult, I think. We have to show them the stigma, the misinformation, and act to bridge the gap. We think radiology can be a powerful advocacy tool because imaging proves the reality of the disease. And if early on radiologists didn't know where to look, now there's tools like arterial spin MRI that can reveal cerebral defects, things like this. And I think they should be our allies. Media education is essential to counter misinformation and raise awareness. We have produced some resources, the media guide. We have produced different tools for public or professional education. But media don't want to talk, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but they don't want to talk about us except in a compassionate way, narrative that we don't want. We don't want compassion, we want action. So we have to protest, to demonstrate, to lie on the floor in front of buildings, and to claim for active care and refuse self-management. And maybe one day the media will wake up if they see this. We're not sure of this, but we try. I will quote again Gwen Fauchois because it's an important speech that I like a lot. She told us a short passage. Anyone who has faced epidemics knows that their management confronts us with invariance. We knew that amid the epidemic, those who would be the most affected would be the most vulnerable. The elderly, the immunocompromised, those with comorbidities, women, the poor, the precarious, migrants, the homeless abandoned on sidewalks, those who already have no access to healthcare, essentially all those considered expendable. all those most vulnerable are us and our loved ones. And as we already know, the state doesn't take care of them. It is us who takes action. That's a passage of her speech that I really like, because I want to draw strength from this lived experience, because it's the wisdom of those who know they must first rely on themselves. And every day, X person die of COVID in total indifference. Every day, X person are handicapped by COVID in total indifference too. And fighting this social acceptability is crucial. I think that without confronting it, solutions for long COVID will remain piecemeal.
Long COVID patients face skepticism from parts of the medical community and a public eager to return to normal, even as the crisis continues. How can advocacy organizations like Winslow Santé Publique and MaskTogetherAmerica support patients struggling with neglect, gaslighting, and even dismissal by their physicians?
Yeah. Overcoming medical skepticism, it's difficult. We must confront what we call the wall of acceptance among physicians who have themselves been repeatedly infected and often accept the risks of the virus. And patients who continue to take precautions can be met with disbelief. What? I accepted it. Why wouldn't she? You know? So we have to explain why I can't deal with another infection, something like this. It's difficult because I think that now there should be guidelines for doctors. And we don't know if we will succeed one by one with our doctor to convince them, you know. So there's a real need for clear, standardized guidelines to help physicians understand and treat long COVID. Communication and education, I think there's two different ways. We must be understanding and educational when engaging with the public, who are victims of misinformation, in fact. For professional, I think we should recall some rights to show the discrimination that is happening. That's what we try to do with the violentomètre, which is a scale of violence towards COVID. But I think that some doctors have been traumatized by the pandemic too, and which contributes to our problems. So we must advance rights, show the discrimination, but we need guidelines. The problem is, in the same time, we have to take care of ourselves. That's a big difficulty we have because we are ill too. And in France, we provide as an association direct patient support. I think you all do this too. Information about doctors, testing, providing support to patients, denouncing stigmatization, going to court to obtain rights back, things like this. We distributed over 25,000 masks to patients last month. We had this as a donation. So it's important to keep this way of taking care of each other, but it's energy too, but it's important. And maybe it would be great to learn from other countries to recognize shared experience and values and use some shared tools. So maybe it would be great to find agreement on basic values, comprehensive disease representation, and accepted terminology, because sometimes vocabulary can differ from different groups and different advocates. So, well, the manifest we did in March in Europe and the declaration recently are initiatives that begins to do this in different directions, but it ensures patient voice are not gate-kept by institutional vision of the disease. And that's important.
Agreed. How can we end long COVID as a global mass disabling health crisis? What actions or measures do you think need to happen on a policy level?
Information of visibility are prevention. Warn about the real burden of long COVID is part of prevention, I think. It will help to show we need action. We have to disinvisibilize long COVID death. I suppose what I say is, I think that one of the ways to obtain prevention is by showing different long COVID presentations, because they are very diverse and we don't see this in the mediatic way long COVID is presented. And the more precarious persons usually have the more health issues before long COVID, before their long COVID, and they have more organ damage, but they have no access to information. And we are in a circle where some kind of patient knows they are long COVID because they have the information and they have the same presentation. And so it becomes the only presentation of long COVID. I don't know if I'm very clear in what I say, but we must break what is it? Because otherwise we will be relegated to the view of a disease affecting dynamic executives who listen too much to their bodies, which is not what long COVID is, because long COVID affects even more precarious persons that doesn't have access to great health information. I don't know if it's understandable what I said. And we have to address future health consequences, even if it's complicated, because we want to have immediate solution for ourselves. But institutions have abandoned us in their heads. So we must insist on what they don't want us to show, that it will deeply affect future generations too, and children with cardiovascular burden, neurological burden, things like this. Because if it's just for us, I think they won't do anything. And even if we are many, we have to ensure, of course, clean air in schools and all public buildings, provide FFP2 mask in every essential closed settings, obtain guidelines for healthcare, use epidemiology to adapt measures in classrooms, for example, provide rapid and effective testing, post-exposure treatments, research into effective nasal vaccines, for example. Well, make prevention and research an emergency priority to avoid future long-term damage. That's how I see that we can have some good points. We also have to protect the identity of the disease. If we let people rename our disease, we will be forgotten, for example.
Thank you. The nasal vaccines are something I'm holding out a lot of hope for, so thank you for mentioning that.
We have one in process here in Tours.
Oh, good.
It's testing on humans, but humans in good health, so not us for the moment.
Well, human trials are still a lot farther than some of the other prototypes have gotten, so I'm hoping. Keeping hope alive. We would like to create a global pledge for long COVID defense. What would you include in this pledge?
So many things. That's difficult. We should try with basic rights for long COVID sufferers, surely. Include commitments to prevention, research, treatment, social rights. Ensure equitable access to existing tools that help manage and prevent long COVID. Maybe establish some common vocabulary around the disease, maybe some kind of code of conduct. That's not a very good name, but advocacy should reflect the seriousness of long COVID and promote protective behavior, I think, because when advocates publicly ignore masking, for example, it undermines prevention efforts. And I think it reduces our credibility, because how can we advocate for prevention without showing prevention? I don't care about what people are doing in their private life, of course. But when you're representing people, it's important to show the seriousness of what you're doing. Ensure that the pledge treats all long COVID burdens equally. I think that's something important. And it should be built collaboratively by patients and advocates, I imagine, and include prevention, ethics, and some, I don't know. I have I think there's so many to put in it. It depends of the angle that this pledge would be, because what do you mean with defense? It's protecting, or is it going forward?
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left. I just wanted to give you kind of the floor if there's anything specific that you'd like to talk about with your organization, or anything that we didn't address that you'd like to talk about.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. And I'm a bit tired, so I will try to listen a bit. It's 11 of the afternoon here. So yeah, the end of the last question, it was difficult for me. I'm sorry.
No, thank you for being here, and especially late at night. We really appreciate you.
No,
All right,
thank you.
folks, thank you so much for being here. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. All right, we are going to get started again. Our next speaker is Dr. Angelique Corthals. She is an associate professor at CUNY, a multidisciplinary researcher, biomedical science and biological and forensic anthropologist, a consultant in diagnostic technology and biologics delivery for Doctors Without Borders. I knew I was going to trip over one of those words. I got so far. Dr. Angelique Corthals is an associate professor and multidisciplinary researcher with an extensive background in biomedical science and biological and forensic anthropology. Her expertise is unique and encompasses a wide range of research areas with a specific focus on the vital connection between neurodegeneration, cell stressors, and the metabolism of carbohydrates and lipids. Moreover, she has studied the origins of diseases and trauma, employing histopathology techniques on contemporary and ancient human and wildlife specimens alike. Leveraging her experience and proficiency in establishing and overseeing cutting-edge core facilities, biobanks, she is also highly sought after as a consultant for establishing new laboratories in both academic and industry spheres. Additionally, Dr. Corthals is privileged to contribute to improving healthcare in underserved regions and communities by serving as a consultant in diagnostic technology and biologics delivery for Doctors Without Borders. She has an unwavering dedication to advocating for equitable access to healthcare for all individuals and is passionate about fostering public engagement in science and amplifying the representation of the LGBTQIA community in STEM fields. By championing these causes, Dr. Corthals aims to create a more inclusive and diverse scientific landscape. Ultimately, she aims to propel scientific advancements, bridge critical knowledge gaps, and inspire the next generation of researchers. Together, she believes we can achieve transformative progress in the pursuit of scientific excellence and a healthier world for everyone. On the fun side, Dr. Corthals is a rower, a saber fencer, and a violinist. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Corthals as our scientific advisor at Mass Together America. So thank you, Angelique, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Our first question is, what is long COVID based on what scientists have learned so far?
In medicine, when we don't know what something is, we call it a syndrome. This is exactly what we're doing with long COVID. It is a series of disease. It's not just one thing, which is why it's important that we get some criteria for the different manifestations of this long COVID. So it's essentially a storm of inflammation, and it can happen in different types of tissues. If you are more susceptible to specific types of diseases, it will affect that particular type of tissue. So it can affect the central nervous system, it can affect the cardiovascular system, it can affect the gut for sure. It can affect many other type of tissues. So technically, it can go anywhere in the body, and it causes a variety of symptoms. It can actually trigger diseases that you've never had, but it actually becomes the trigger of those diseases. So you can develop autoimmune diseases, very clearly, specifically neurodegenerative autoimmune diseases, but also autoimmune diseases that affect the kidney, the guts, the lungs. It can even, as far as the research has been done on this, it looks like it does trigger certain kind of cancers. So long COVID is essentially, I would say, the consequence of an acute COVID infection or multiple COVID infections, which then transforms into a series of symptoms or one disease that's being triggered by these infections.
What are the root causes of long COVID, and what is triggering the chronic symptoms?
So the gut is really important for that particular reason. Also can affect, so SARS-CoV-2 is, as we know now, as we've known very early on in the pandemic, we know that it has an affinity with a receptor that's found in the blood vessels and in the heart called ACE2. Some of there's ACE2 blockers out there, which are commonly taken by people. So ACE2 will attract the virus and cause vasculitis, so an inflammation of the blood vessels, or an inflammation of the heart muscle. There's also direct evidence of, beside neurodegeneration, there's also direct evidence that SARS-CoV-2 really loves the central nervous system. There's been a couple of studies that have been linked to the SARS-CoV-2 virus riding on the vagus nerve and causing a series of symptoms like POTS, for example, or tachycardia, or guts, GI problems, etc., because the vagus nerve is one of the most ubiquitous nerve that generates a lot of that actually controls a lot of function in your body. So it's many different things all at once. What is the name of that movie? Everything All at Once. Yeah,
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. That would be the perfect encapsulation of long COVID.
I like the movie better than the disease.
Yeah.
What are the biomarkers for long COVID?
So, interestingly, there was a paper that was published in April where the researchers have a series of biomarkers that can be found in a blood test. And I can post it for everybody if you want. I'm going to put the link right there in the chat. So it's a Nature paper, so you know it's reputable. So there's many different markers out there. Specifically, the markers have to do with inflammation, and particularly inflammatory responses that go outside of their normal boundaries. So we have the tumor factor alpha, TNF alpha, and interleukin 4. Those are common inflammatory response markers, which will be elevated in patients that have long COVID. There's a series of other markers that also have to do with inflammation and the immune system, CCL3, CD4. I'm not going to tell you all of them because it will be a list that nobody knows really much about, but those markers exist. They have been tested on patients, and there's now a greater promise of using those biomarkers to detect long COVID, or the possibility that there might be long COVID for a patient that's just had an acute infection of COVID, or a series of acute infections in the future, where we can predict it and try to stop it at the root.
This is just my cynical side note, but if we can get these biomarkers to be more mainstream, then we just need a company to develop some kind of a mail-in test for them that they can make money on, and then suddenly everyone will get to find out if they have long COVID or not. So maybe this is one spot where we cheer for capitalism to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm hoping that the paradigm of pharmaceutical can be changed. I mean, this is what I do for Doctors Without Borders, right? We try to cheer on R&D from academic institutions rather than big pharmaceutical companies, so that we can have more affordable tests for people to have at home. And those markers are not difficult. There's already tests available for some of those markers, so they could be done really quickly. They could be engineered really quickly and cheaply.
If I'm up to date on my vaccinations and I'm infected, will I still develop long COVID?
Well, yes, unfortunately. So the vaccine doesn't fully protect against transmission, unfortunately. And so if you don't protect yourself by masking, or by having clean air in a room, or mitigating, and you are infected multiple times, every time you're infected, you multiply your chances of developing long COVID. So protecting yourself, the vaccine is not enough. We always advocate the Swiss cheese medication, right? Mitigation. So basically, multiple layers of mitigation, because not one of those layers is perfect, and the vaccination is one. Obviously, masking is another. But I would like to specify, however, that the vaccine does lower. So new research that's just been published, and it's very, very good. It's been done on literally millions of people. It does the vaccines of all kinds, so that mRNA and protein have been shown to lower the amount of viral particle in the respiratory tract of the people who have been vaccinated, which means that, if they sneeze and if they're not masking, and if they sneeze, there's a lower amount of those viral particles that go out into the air. So the vaccine does have a modest effect on transmission, but of course it's not enough, right? It's not perfect. It doesn't stop transmission. And this is where the promise of the nasal vaccine comes in. I absolutely am a proponent of the nasal vaccine, which is I see as the only way to stop viral transmission through vaccination.
Should a long COVID research index used for recruiting patients only list 12 symptoms and give extra points on certain symptoms such as PEM, smell and taste disorder, and have a much lower score for common symptoms such as fatigue? Does this scoring system leave research at risk of underrepresenting long COVID patients? And how would this 11-point scoring index affect the accuracy in reporting the prevalence of long COVID?
Yeah, that's a problem. So unfortunately, when you go to medical school, what you learn is you don't learn science at all. You're supposed to have done that the 4 years prior to medical school. What you learn to do is to be a massive regression machine. And so you learn a set of symptoms. That set of symptoms, you check. Okay, here's the treatment. Check. Right? This is why these criteria for long COVID exist. They are horrifying because, first of all, we don't yet know all of the manifestation of long COVID. So giving importance and ranking to some of the long COVID signs and symptoms is absolutely nuts, and will only create a marginalization amongst the marginalized, and will drop people off who do have long COVID but do not fit into those little check marks. So we need a better system. We need a much more encompassing system that will allow us to. And as far as I'm concerned, if I were to see a series of patients with any of the symptoms that are known or even unknown after they've had a history of COVID infections, I would follow them no matter what the symptom is. Even if it is only one symptoms out of that list, I would follow those patients up for potential long COVID. I would not wait for those 12 symptoms to be checked.
What is your recommendation for people who have vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine? How can they protect themselves from infection and development of long COVID?
Yeah, so this is a tough one because they do exist. The vaccine injury, unfortunately, do exist, and my recommendation, and it was the case when we got the first wave of vaccines, was to do a thorough checkup with your physician who knows your medical history, or at least somebody who can do a thorough checkup to make sure that you don't have a condition that may be made worse by the vaccination. We know those conditions from other vaccination. So if you have an autoimmune disease, for example, we know that you should be careful for the flu. For example, if you have an autoimmune disease, you have to get a lower dosage, a special kind of vaccine that will diminish your chances of developing vaccine injury. If you have the vaccine injury, the two best specialists that you should see are the rheumatologist and physicians who are specialized in autoimmunity. Those are people who will be more likely to check thoroughly for mitigating that vaccine injury.
Thank you. Are there consequences for governmental pandemic responses focusing exclusively on protecting vulnerable populations from infectious diseases rather than all people? In other words, are there harms when we essentially infect all the healthy people to try to achieve herd immunity?
Well, yeah, you're at risk of making the healthy people unhealthy. So yes, absolutely. And it also comes, so there's two different type of problem here. First of all, if you're waiting for all the healthy people to get the disease and get a chance that they might develop long-term consequences, that's a problem. But there's also a stigma on the vulnerable. And I think that we haven't talked a lot about that, the stigmatization of vulnerability in pandemics. And so that has a serious consequence socially, right? And it leads to exclusion from society. It can emphasize the element that makes these population vulnerable. And now not only do you get not only do you get a physical and health consequence, but you also get a mental health consequence and societal consequences when you practice these kinds of policies.
Also, if everyone who is currently healthy ends up getting long COVID, then our whole population is vulnerable. And it's my absolute favorite thing to think long and hard about.
Oh, absolutely.
We would like to create a global pledge for long COVID defense. What should be included in this pledge?
Well, yeah. So there's many different things like Solenn just mentioned. I think that at the top of the list is promote mitigations for all and through education. Obviously, the measures, the sort of top-down measures that had to be taken were not well taken by society in general. And we can spend the rest of the 3 hours that we have on why that was, but I think education is key in here, and it's education not just about mitigation for the general public, but also physicians' education, ethics, and one of the things that is important, and that goes back to what we were talking about, is to not put all the burden of public health on the vulnerable populations, right? So, yeah. I think that this has been attributed to so many different people. I think Sun Tzu and George Washington, but the sentence that says the best defense is a good offense. I think in this case, the root of all of our defense is going to be a big fundraiser, rager of a fundraiser, which is actually what the advocacy for AIDS had done during the AIDS epidemic, and are still being done in communities where AIDS is still a problem, for education, not just societal education, so education of physician, but also education of mitigation. And look what it has done in terms of wearing condoms or protecting having protected sex for AIDS has been huge. It's changed mentalities completely. This is the kind of thing that we need for COVID to change mentalities about mitigation such as masking, mitigation such as providing clean air in public spaces. I mean, I can't understand why clean air in public spaces is controversial at all. Who doesn't want clean air, right? Well, obviously, it may be said that it is expensive. In the greater scheme of things, it really is not expensive to provide cleaner air in public spaces. So we can do it. It's a win for the long haul. Unfortunately, these things don't change over time. It literally takes sometimes generations, and we're seeing it with AIDS, right? It took a couple of generations before the idea of protected sex was basically in everybody's language, right? Same thing with the mask and COVID. It's going to take a long time before people realize, hey, you know what? If I wear a mask in public or in crowded public settings to prevent any kind of airborne pathogens, it's going to protect me not just from COVID, but it's going to protect me from the flu. It's going to protect me from common colds, may protect me from asthma by protecting me from pollution, et cetera, et cetera. So there's many different advantages to the mitigation that are not just linked to COVID. And I think all of that should be explained into the pledge and part of these massive campaign of educations that we have to keep at it. It has to eventually filter to the subconscious of societies at large until it becomes a natural response. It's like, oh, it's November, I'm in the crowded subway, I'm going to put on my mask. And eventually, of course, in the political system so that we can have mitigation that are to be performed by the political system, like clean air in public spaces.
Well, we know just in the last 100 years, we've gone from cigarettes being recommended by doctors to now you can't have a smoking and non-smoking section in a restaurant anymore. So my hope is, this is a thing that people aren't thinking about right now, but hopefully in, the near future, it's a no-brainer. How did we ever get away with having filthy indoor air?
Yeah, and the thing is, I know right now is particularly it's discouraging right now, right? Because right now we are at a point where COVID is almost a word that people don't dare mention. And we have to keep at it. We have to keep mentioning it, and we have to keep putting it in people's mouth, literally, and show them that just because you're not pronouncing the name doesn't mean that you're safe from it, right? And there are ways to make yourself safer and mitigate this very dangerous infection.
I am out of pre-written questions for you, so I just want to give you the floor if there's anything that you would like to address or things that we didn't cover.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a question from the audience, I'm happy to take it.
We do have a chat panel open. If anyone wants to drop a question in the chat for Dr. Corthals, we can take a couple of questions.
But if not, oh yeah.
No, I do have a question. Yeah, actually, from your perspective, because you've seen this evolve, would you say we've got a lot of talk right now in the community about this whole AIDS and how it's similar to SARS and whether or not SARS is airborne AIDS? Yes. So we've seen that. And my question really is that, do you feel like we'd have to change the name to be taken more seriously? Or how is it that we can make this scarier? You know, people are scared of cancer. They're scared of AIDS. They're not scared of long COVID.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure we need to change the name of long COVID, and I really take issue with people describing COVID as airborne AIDS. It really is denying a whole history of AIDS and AIDS patients. It's not the same virus at all. It doesn't do the same. I know that it does look like it does the same by lowering the immunity, but that's actually something that all viruses more or less do. But biologically, it makes no sense to call it airborne AIDS. Biologically, it makes no sense to call it societally either or ethically either. So I take issue with that because it's not helping the cause. And quite the contrary, it's making us, well, it would make us sound a little odd and quite unprofessional and unethical. I take your point with trying to call it something different. So what we can do is to, for example, I'm currently trying to develop a compound for neurodegeneration caused by long COVID, and so if you call it long COVID caused neurodegeneration, which is not easy to say, it's not catchy, but if you put neurodegeneration in there, people are going to start paying a little bit more attention, right? It's long, but it's a little bit scarier. I think long COVID, this is where you need the campaign of education to show just how debilitating long COVID can be, and the series of symptoms that come with developing long COVID. I got lost into my own explanation. Have I answered your question? Sorry.
Becky, you're muted, but it looks like you're saying yes.
Yes.
Okay.
She definitely answered. I just know she's got history and in the area, and so it was a great answer. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Corthals, I got a couple of questions out of the chat for you. The first question is, what are your thoughts on the development of an actual prevention vaccine, what we were originally promised at the start of the pandemic?
Yes. So, so we were actually on the way to having a nasal vaccine, which was very quickly after during the lockdowns. As a matter of fact, there were talks of developing nasal vaccines for COVID. Unfortunately, they were just about ready to go into trials here in the United States. As you know, in January, a lot of those things were thrown out onto the weight pile. But there are a series of nasal vaccines that are in development in other countries that have shown a lot of promise. Solenn mentioned the one that is being developed in France. So that I think is the most promising avenue for anti-transmission for COVID vaccination. Yeah.
Thank you. We got one What are the nearest comparable illnesses to COVID, things that people might respond to?
COVID is COVID. It is caused by SARS-CoV-2, and it is its own disease. So there's no other disease that it's associated to. But long COVID, on the other hand, has a series of symptoms and signs and symptoms that are similar to other disease, but are very much caused by, triggered by the infection with SARS-CoV-2. And, you can have diseases that are also triggered by SARS-CoV-2, like autoimmune diseases, or now we actually know certain types of cancer. Let's not forget that it's not new that viruses cause cancer, by the way, because everybody's like, oh my God, people are saying COVID causes cancer. Well, actually, HPV causes cancer, right? So HPV causes cervical cancer, right? So viruses are known to trigger a series of systems, and the danger of minimizing COVID right now is that we don't yet know all the things that it can trigger. So if you don't know all the things that it can trigger, and those consequences are dire, they don't just kill, they also disable for life. Then if you know that it's going to have consequences, but that you don't know exactly all of the consequences that it may have, it's clear that now it's also triggering dementia, all sorts of neurodegenerative disease. It triggers early onset dementia, it triggers Parkinson's, it triggers multiple sclerosis, and so it triggers all of these series of really horrid disease for which we don't yet have a cure, by the way. Why not? If you know that there's this sort of umbrella of consequences, of horrid consequences, then your best approach at this point is to do everything to not develop COVID, right? Not be infected, and mitigate as much as possible.
What does the current research suggest about the minimum number of viral particles that could be an infectious dose, and what are the implications? While wearing a well-fitting N95 or higher rated mask provides much protection, I know some very COVID cautious people who got COVID from one-way masking in mask optional settings.
I don't know the latest on the numbers of particles that you need to, because of course it's not just a series of particles. It also depends on the volume of air in the room that you're in. So are you in a small room? Are you in a big room? Is it very ventilated? It's not well ventilated, as well as the time of interaction. So the longer you are in a room with viral particle floating around, the more likely you're going to be infected by those viral particle. Now, yes, there are people who do develop COVID have while masking with N95s. It's rare because it really is the best protection if you're going to be in a setting where you are, for example, in a small room with a lot of people for a long time. N95 is definitely the best. Catching COVID in those circumstances is difficult with a well-fitted N95, but it's not impossible, right? They're N95, they're not N100. there's always a possibility that you might have, if you are really in a setting where you are overwhelmed by the amount of viral particles that are circulating, just because you're spending a long time in there, you may actually get those viral particles to get through to you, especially if you're extra vulnerable to viral infection. And unfortunately, that does occur as well. Some people are more vulnerable to viral infections than others. This is something also that needs to be taken into consideration.
I've got a question. I have been a long COVID prevention activist since 2020. The frustrating thing is that very few doctors are supporting our fight. How can more of your doctor colleagues be convinced to fight this fight for prevention?
So right now, there's not a lot of doctors that are gonna be. I think it was Solenn who mentioned this. A lot of physicians have had PTSD from the acute phase of the pandemic, right? And they have developed sort of this sort of flipped attitude towards COVID, where basically it's over and let's move past it. It's just the flu. There's also doctors who will not learn anything anymore. I think right now we should target medical schools, if anything, because this is the new generation of doctors that are going to be treating most of long COVID patients, and these are the people that we can actually already start teaching about recognizing long COVID as a multitude of symptoms and things that that may not be showing up quite yet as a recognized symptoms, and try to listen to the patients. And that's actually something that we're seeing in the medical education in general as a problem, is that physicians in training are not being taught to listen to patients, and they don't. When they get into the profession, starting from the internship all the way to the residency, there's barely any time to listen to the patients. And if you've been to a specialist, you know that you get seen by the nurse for 15 minutes who takes your vitals for the 20th time, and then you see the specialist for 5 minutes. They ask you if you're lucky, you see them for 5 minutes. If you're very lucky, you see them for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, there is no way for patients to really recall all of the symptoms that they experience, right? Because the patient feels nervous as well, and they can feel that time is limited. So all of a sudden you try to recall everything that's happening to you, sort of in verbal diarrhea of things, and communication gets lost and you don't get treated properly. I think it's very, very important. We have a massive problem on our hand right now, and that's medical education. There's not enough doctors coming through, but medical education doesn't emphasize listening to the patient. And I think that's something that we need to change at the root. So generally speaking, there's a little bit more hope with the younger generation of physicians. They tend to be more aware of this problem, and they tend to be a little bit more empathetic and have more better bedside manners in general. So if you find one, keep that one. But it is a problem, and it's not just a problem here in the United States. It's a problem all over the place. I was with my mother in the hospital in Belgium, and the doctor could only see her for maybe 10 minutes, had the you know, the most perfunctory chat with her, and then sent her on her way. And I was absolutely horrified. Then she tried to make an appointment for a specialist, and it was going to take 6 months before she could see the specialist. When we ask why, it's because there's a lack of doctors, right? We and this is a problem that is happening all over the world, and that needs to be addressed.
Thank you so, so much, Dr. Corthals, for spending time with us to talk
Sure.
about this tonight. We really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Folks, we're going to take about a 5-minute break here, so come back at 6:35 Eastern for Adam, our long COVID patient activist and indoor air quality advocate. So we'll see you back here in 4 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Corthals.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I feel like I was a little, I was a bit disconnected, but it's such a huge problem. It's actually such a huge problem of not being able to, and you can't lay that at the feet of all physicians, right? It's like the fact that they don't have enough time to see you because they have 50 other patients after you.
And the way to see a specialist
Yeah.
is like a year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I know.
And then by the time you see a specialist, you're like, oh, maybe I'll get something out of this. Maybe this will be it. Like I will get some answers and possibly some treatments. But no, it just ended up, no, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to see someone else.
Yeah.
I have been bounced around. I've seen 23 specialists. They just keep bouncing me around, sending me to everywhere possible. And I broke down so many times in these offices.
Yeah.
And I begged them for mercy. Help me, please, please just help me. And no.
It's like, yeah, well, yeah, they pass it on, but and it's interesting because so with Liliana we went to a rheumatologist, and we finally found somebody who actually listened. And the reason why she listened is because she is a part-time physician, so she doesn't actually need to work, but she decided that she was gonna do it part-time, and so she feels like she has all the time in the world to listen to the patients. And it was such a different thing, right? It's like all of a sudden we spent like, well, I think like an hour in her office, right? But they're so rare.
Is she in Long Island?
She's in Stony Brook, yes. She's in.
Oh, maybe I need to travel to see her.
Yeah, actually you do. This Dr. Metzger, she's incredible. And she's, for all autoimmunity and obviously rheumatology, but she's incredibly good.
That's
and
good
she
to
will
know.
listen. Yeah, and she will listen to you. I mean, it's also a game of chance, right? Dr. Robbie,
Absolutely. I know as you were talking about the lack of physicians, I was thinking, I was wondering what your experience has been talking with other physicians, and that it was never like this before COVID, where you had so long to wait to get seen. And so does anybody bother to contemplate that we lost so many physicians because they died, or they got long COVID, or they left because they have PTSD?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in my current GP is like overwhelmed with patients because like he's seeing both his regulars and his former partner's regulars, used to be my doctor, but like got a severe case of long COVID, can't work anymore, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there's so many physicians that are leaving the profession too because of PTSD or the depression and burnout. Yeah, it's something that's not taught a lot because of course the minute, I don't know if it was the same, but I mean the first day of medical school is basically tough it out, right? That's what they teach you. Just tough it out.
Absolutely. It's the same in shrink school.
Yeah. My
All
doctor
right.
asked me, "Oh, are you getting adjusted now?" It's like, oh, that means like I'm gonna live with
Just
this for the rest of my life, and you're not gonna do anything about it. I'm just gonna have to adjust to my life to this pain, isn't it?
mm-hmm.
And so that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because long COVID is an adjustment disorder.
Yeah, just adjust around it. Like, yeah, okay.
All right. Well, I am back. Thank you for keeping the conversation going in my absence. I want to pivot into our next section with Adam, Adam Van Bavel, or Bavel. You can tell me if I'm saying it wrong. I apologize.
Van
Uh,
Bavel.
Babel?
Yeah.
Okay. Adam Van Babel. Adam is a long COVID patient activist and indoor air quality advocate. He's dedicated his life to the intersection of the two issues and the urgent need to address them through swift and thoughtful action. And he's the administrator of the Maryland Indoor Air Quality Advocates, the MIAQA. So thank you so much, Adam, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Our first question for you is, what is long COVID to you as a long COVID patient?
Mhm. Well, first, just let me thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. It's been really informative, but also, disheartening to listen to everyone so far because a lot of what I plan to say has already been said. So, if I reiterate things, just know that that's the shared experience. Um, but I think that does show the urgent need that we face in this. So, to me, it's pretty simple, and at its most simplistic, it's a quality of life diminisher and it's a lifespan shortener. Both of those things are a guarantee. The end of society as we know it, I feel comfortable in saying. Some of the things we've already heard tonight were, oh, we need to get the message out to more people because we have a shortage of time. So why do we have a shortage of time? Well, your executive functions is one of the things that COVID works against diminishing in your brain with neurological decline, with creating a lot more apathy. We're definitely a less empathetic society than we were pre-COVID. And that's not going to get any better, obviously, with reinfection. So we have a shortening window. It is not like we're dealing with this and there's no cure and it's not going to get worse. It's getting worse as long as there's no cure. So those things I feel confident in. So SARS-CoV-2 is the virus, COVID-19 is the infection, long COVID is the umbrella condition, and SARS-CoV-2 at its most simplistic mechanism, again, is an aging accelerant. A virus actively, it breaks down your cells, your organs, invisibly. So I was fine until I wasn't. I didn't get my first known infection until August of 22, which was, for all things, considered, relatively late. And I hobbled along. I used to be a business owner in life sciences, coincidentally. Many of my clients are the people who make the diagnostics and the vaccines, not just for COVID, but for cancer, for AIDS, for diabetes, for Alzheimer's. And I struggled and I didn't know what was happening. And I did everything I possibly could to get better. And none of that worked. And then I eventually went out on disability. But I bring that up because it's that things that are invisible are very difficult for the average person to take seriously. If it's invisible, it doesn't exist. until the damage becomes noticeable. And at that point, it's too late. So imagine feeling like you're dying every day in multiple ways for days, weeks, months, in my case, years, many people years. And obviously, now having a good understanding of what people with chronic illness, pre-COVID and long COVID went through and have lived a similar experience for decades, I cannot imagine. But imagine being like that at 40, like I was when this started, and feeling like you're 70 or older, and actually having the biomarkers and the functionality of someone that age. Like my in-laws, my parents are in better shape than I am, which is pathetic. And it's hard for them, and it's really hard for me because I've got two little kids. Long COVID is daily hell. It's there. I tell my wife, and this isn't being pessimistic, there are no good days, there are just better days. Like every day I wake up and I'm in pain. I have either a terrible headache or I have zero energy despite a long night of sleep. I'm like a data freak. I have this brand new ring coming called a bond ring that's like supposed to be the pinnacle of, biometrics. And, there's a graphic I shared a while back on X, and it's a Whoop graphic, and they basically look at a lot of different biomarkers and they judge strain. So strain would be like as you're working out, or if you're a CrossFit person, how hard is your body working? And it looks at things like respiratory rate, heart rate, VO2 max, all these different criteria. Well, after I got long COVID, once COVID got me, it's very clear. I went from having periods of like strain, recovery, rest to all strain. And that graphic is one entire visual where I'm up here and it looks like I'm doing CrossFit or ultra marathons every day. So imagine living like that. Just imagine your body never gets a break. And that's what long COVID is. The last thing I want to share is that's my personal experience for long COVID. Everyone's is different. They're people that are, bedbound in dark rooms with eye masks on and, wearing headphones. But then there's also people with, long COVID that may just have debilitating migraines that they work through because they're a single parent. They don't have they can't quit their job, can't get disability, they've got kids to pay for, there's no one to help. And they go in, and that's really hits on the quality of life diminisher. And clearly that's a lifespan shortener because you cannot just live like that infinitely. Eventually, that or something that is triggered by that is going to get you. But, those things add up. And the thing that I really want to point out is, and a lot of people have mentioned this, we talk about doctors, right? Where are all the doctors going? Well, I've had 6 doctors in the 3+ years that I've had long COVID. They're gone. They're all like 45, 50 years old at most. So that is 100%. I know for a few of them, health issues, which they're young and I knew them pretty well. While they didn't say long COVID, pretty clear. And the rest, it is probably just PTSD and trauma. So that is not exclusive, to the medical field. That's like when you call a service person for your air conditioner or your toilet, it takes longer. It's why when you go to the mechanic, it takes longer. Everything takes longer. Why? Look at disability. And I'll share a document and I can put in the chat what I'm going to reference right now. There is nothing visually that says in as impactful as a way that this does what long COVID is doing. You look at the disability numbers and they're like plateau for a long time. Last 5 years, staggering. 7% year over year, just whoop. Those numbers end in August. Why? Because we have a shit government that's murdering public health, that hasn't been counting any data for quite some time. So those numbers are higher now than you're looking at. But that in itself is the problem. Why do you think AI is like getting massive investment? We're about to like bail out OpenAI. This is what is happening. And that graph right there is what is happening. Because it doesn't matter if it's people on this call, if it's people that aren't on this call, it does not discriminate. In my mind, until I'm proven that there are, a subset of society that is immune in some way, this is everyone. And that graph says, even if it's not everyone, it's enough people that is going to completely and fundamentally change society moving forward if we do not curb this now. So that's what I think long COVID is.
Thank you. I mean, you're reaching me, and there's a lot of feedback in the chat that is saying that your way of describing this is very important and transparent, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
What are some of the barriers that people with long COVID face in seeking care? Can you share your experience with that?
Yeah. I'm an emotional person. So like this really cuts to it because when you feel like so many of us feel, and I mean, I'm fortunate, like I can still drive myself to the doctor. I feel like shit every day. I've had a substantial amount of physical and mental trauma, um, throughout my life, which I have my own hypothesis how that probably led to a more negative outcome because of the way and the mechanisms in which SARS operates. But anyway, um, I'm able to get to the doctors, and when you go to a doctor and you feel in a way that you've never felt, that's terrifying in a novel virus that has caused a pandemic. Obviously, that impacts everyone traumatically, right? Not just the people who are living the negative side of it. So you go to a doctor thinking your whole life you go to the doctor for flu, you go to the doctor for chicken pox, you go to a doctor for a broken arm, doctor makes you better, right? And doctors are used to being able to medicate their way out of whatever the symptoms are, throw some Tylenol at it, some Oxycontin at it, whatever it is. But like there's no medicating your way out of long COVID. So you go there and you get gaslit. And it's I take pride, I don't, in being a young white male that was a former business owner, I like to be loud because like there are some other people that might not be as loud as I am, and I feel like I need to speak up for everyone as much as I can. And when I had doctors telling me it's just anxiety, you're fine, it's stress, it's something else going on. I can't explain it, but you're fine. It really comes down to you have to, and this is every aspect of life, but as far as your own health, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to. I'm going to put another link in the chat if people want to check it out. And this is not like medical advice. Maybe there's things in there you find useful, maybe not. I have it's almost a 40-page document that I've made public since I got sick. And it's everything I've done. And now, if I go in 3+ years later to a doctor, and this happened recently twice, to rheumatologist, because I'm trying to get Pemgarda, because it's the one thing that potentially shows promise, for someone in my scenario. And they're telling me, what would make you possibly think that you would need this? And I show them, and I look through my biomarkers, and we talked about that earlier. And there are certain biomarkers that aren't necessarily indicative of long COVID, but when you were perfectly healthy prior and you have now like no or non-existent memory T cells, NK cells, your nucleocapsid and spike shows a certain thing, you have ferritin low and iron high, and there's iron dysfunction, CD4, CD8. I know a couple other people mentioned monocytes. I've never had a monocyte reading in like 4 years that's below 10%. I get some serious shit going on in my monocytes. Speckled pattern, ANA. these are all things that I'm well too versed in now that I had no idea were prior to this. And when you're armed with that, they might not have an answer for you, but they're going to stop gaslighting you because they're like, shit, this person knows what they're talking about. And I don't. And I'm not going to convince them that this is anxiety because they have enough documentation that this is not anxiety. So there aren't necessarily biomarkers or a test yet, but there are things that are very clear indicators that point you in that direction that lay a strong foundation. And as you go around seeing doctors, you're able to make your case. And I think hopefully what other people realize is the moment I walk in and I'm in a mask and I have like my little air filter with me, oftentimes I'll get like a smug look or a question, but like if I get grief, I'm like, well, it's been nice, bye. Like, I don't care. There's a million doctors out there. If I have to wait 6 months to see another one who's not going to be able to offer me anything of like productive value anyway, that's fine. Because I'm not going to like take myself down, go through that stress, that mental agony and toil of another doctor who doesn't know anything and is going to try to make me feel worse about myself when I have enough that I'm dealing with. So, um, I think that the knowledge is a clear issue. The interest, I mean, to me, it's medical malpractice. Like, you have a code of ethics. I don't give a shit what medical field you're in. Like, we've already talked about, COVID impacts your cells, your organs. Like, you could be a podiatrist and you should know something about it because it impacts inflammation in your joints. Like, every doctor should have foundational knowledge about COVID. You don't have to be an expert, but you at least have to know something. So when patients are coming in knowing far more than the doctor, that's malpractice. Like that's a big problem. And that just points to ignorance. Because if you lack the knowledge and you don't have the interest when you're a doctor to learn it, then you're just ignorant. And you should find another job. You should be my mechanic, and that way I can take my car into the shop and get it serviced a little sooner.
How can we address rising absentee issues in schools and rising disability in the workforce due to long COVID?
Um, so we've talked about this a lot, and it's one of those things that's really clear. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I was in New York at the UN for a General Assembly meeting, a healthy indoor air meeting, and everyone knows what the problem is. And the issue is like wearing a mask is an individual action, right? We tried it collectively and it very clearly worked. We eliminated a strain of flu. Um, my children, I've been trying to get HEPA filters in their classrooms for 2 years and just had a 504 SST meeting, which they denied. I asked them to send me their attendance from kindergarten through now. And my oldest, who I use as the litmus test because he's been in since the pandemic started, he's had a gradual increase in absences every year, getting worse. Because like last year, he had mycoplasma, strep, bronchitis, COVID, flu, mystery virus. And masks work very well, by the way, because when we find that out, I haven't been sick since February 24 in my own home with that. And I have two kids that have had that. So we also have a lot of indoor air elements at play, which are what we're talking about. So like MERV 16, UV. But the one year that he had, it was a second year. And I'll just use hypothetically, it was like the numbers were like the first year 10, then 12, and then it was like 14, 16, 18, 20. But the year that there was a reduction was the year when masks were mandated in school and they had HEPA filters in the classroom. And I'm like, we know the answers. And it is because masks are individual, we need collective action. So what that means is mandating, getting government and getting corporations, which if you're going to get a corporation, that means you have to have laws and that means you have to enforce those laws. So it is a lot harder when we talk about the workforce to curb long COVID, because the existing workforce and the soon term workforce, that is reliant on indoor air quality for the most part in public spaces or in private spaces, depending on who owns the building. That's a lot harder to make happen. Where I'm putting everything, because this is our future, like I know my life is now shorter because of long COVID. It's 100%. Unless some drug comes along that's able to reverse the damage, I have a definitively shorter lifespan than I did pre-COVID. But the future, especially those children who don't have long COVID yet, which is now more prevalent than asthma, which has been the leading chronic illness in children for the decades since they started tracking it, and it's been, a leading chronic illness in general for centuries. So that's great because, obviously long COVID hasn't even existed a decade. But public schools are where we can force action. You have 70% of community transmission occurring in public schools. So if we know that, and we already knew kids were sick and we just accepted it, we would send our kids in, well, say we, bad parents would send their kids into school sick, and we collectively, who would be mad that our kids were always sick in school because other people would send their kids in school sick, because we had to go to work. You got to work, work, work. And it's been mentioned in the chat many times, capitalism. Like, it was accepted because it was beaten into our heads. Just got to go to work, got to go to work, send your kids into sick, show up at work sick. Like, it's all bullshit. Like, this has been the same issue for a long time. COVID just exposed it. So now that we know what the issue is, and it's not just COVID, by the way, I mean, we've got a slew of respiratory viruses now. We have asthma, we have mold, we've got particulate matter, things that didn't exist or didn't matter as much in the previous decade, like wildfire smoke and microplastics, which no one knew about a decade ago, and now everyone does. Like, it's everywhere. Pick your poison. So if we know that, why are we doing nothing to protect our future? And the people teaching them, and the people that they're bringing that back into not only our homes, but obviously our community. Because the vast majority of people, their kids come home, then they go out to work, and that's obviously how you have spread. So if you need to curb transmission, you need to get it stopped in schools.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
What do you as a long hauler consider a safe IAQ in classrooms for COVID mitigation?
So one of the things that was really just pretty mind-blowing and just, I mean, the whole point of this call is, it's inspiring because it's bringing together a group, it's sharing knowledge, but it's also just incredibly sad that like we have to like, I think everyone knows an extent of what we know. There's a lot of people that know less. But good ventilation is just like, it's common sense. And one of the things I first learned when I tried to donate these HEPA units to my kids' classrooms, they said no. And I said, well, can you do me a solid and just open the windows? That would be great. Just get some extra airflow. We can't do that. Why can't you do that? Because kids have mass shootings in schools now. So you can't open the fucking windows because kids are bringing in semi-automatic guns and murdering people in school. I mean, like, and that plays into the bigger part of the reason. So those things existed pre-COVID and they'll continue to exist. But another thing that we need to realize is indoor air quality doesn't just mitigate respiratory, and it doesn't just, the other things I've said, but it's behavioral issues. It's violence. We're seeing more one-off instances of kids in schools stabbing, shooting. There was someone today referenced to me, like a 6-year-old in kindergarten a couple years ago, brought a gun in. There were teachers that made their assistant principal aware. The assistant principal decided not to act on it, thinking it was hearsay or whatever. And they ended up shooting their teacher. And like the teacher is now suing the assistant principal, which I guess is technically the district or the school. But there will, with certainty, because of just talking about COVID and not to mention everything else that happens neurologically with bad air, there is going to be more incidents of violence in schools and behavioral issues. And we're seeing that. Like, it's not something that you need to question. So, anyway, good ventilation is a simple one if you can open your windows, you know. High filtration. So, having, and this is something that is really contingent on the school and them having someone who cares, excuse me, and does their job well. So, having like a MERV 13 filter versus like maybe an 8. And for those that don't know, a MERV is just a rating system, and a 13 is what's viewed as being high quality filtration media filter. So it's going to filter out a lot of the things that we care about and make that air a better quality air to be breathing so that you can not only teach better, but learn better, you know, so that you're going to have better test scores, you're going to have less absenteeism, and low CO2 and monitor daily. So Boston, if you're unfamiliar, Boston has the nation's first fully rolled out school district where every day they monitor the classrooms across their entire district. Now, in Maryland, where I am, there's one district, Montgomery County, that does that. And they're not quite as good as Boston, but they're very good. And I can look right now, well, if it were during the school day, and I could see my wife went to school in Montgomery County. I can see her high school, and I can see they had like a CO2 reading that was in the mid 600s, which is phenomenal for a high school. Phenomenal. I can only pray that my children's elementary school is anywhere near that because it's probably well north of 1,000. But CO2, and this is something that I'd love to point out, is a very clear indicator of how pathogens travel that are respiratory. And in Maryland, there's a law that we have found, my organization, that has been broken for years. And we're trying right now to have some lawsuits formed so that we can have this be scaled across the country and start creating some action. In Maryland, this has existed that every 4 years, every classroom in the state should have its CO2 in addition to other indoor air quality measurements in an assessment taken. It has never once happened with exception to Montgomery County and has nothing to do with the law. It's only because Montgomery County actually used their ESSER funds when they were, you know, distributed. And because, and I know this because I was in life sciences, Montgomery County is where NIH, FDA, it's right by DC. It's very affluent. There's a lot of big decision makers. So that's the only reason why the only district in all of Maryland that is doing anything is there, because that's where the money is, that's where the affluent people, that's where the decision makers are. So that should be happening daily, and it's not. Now, ideally, if you could do things like far UVC 222, which there are more studies needed, but as I said, I'm a little bit of a radical. You know, I'm of the camp that nothing's worse than COVID, so I just want to kill it. And I know that, you know, there's a potential there for that, but at least PM1 and PO2, PM2 and VOCs too would also be monitored in addition to CO2. If you're monitoring for all those things and you have good ventilation and good filtration, then you're in a good place. The filtration again is going to be hard because, you know, the mechanical system of the school, the are they changing the filters properly? But you know, that's going to put you in a really good place. And I would say that, you know, if you at a bare minimum haven't yet and you're on this call, please ask your teachers, you know, if you assuming you have kids in school to or if you're a teacher on this call, just open your windows. Like it's the easiest thing you can do to make a difference, and it's not occurring in a lot of cases.
Well, Adam, we are just about out of time, and I really want to just say thank you for kind of speaking truth in a way that is very vulnerable and straightforward, and we just really appreciate it. I think sometimes, you know, we need to hear stories like yours just to remind us of how important this is and that there are people out there who are continuing to work for keeping kids healthy in schools. There are people out there who are trying to spread the truth about indoor air quality, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm really sorry that this is so personal for you, but I know that everyone on here who has long COVID, and for those of us who may have long COVID in the future, we are better because we have you as a voice in this community. So thank you for the work you do. I'm going to drop in the chat one more time. This is the Maryland Indoor Air Quality Advocates group that Adam is the admin for. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here. And
if I can share one thing, I
absolutely.
just put in the chat too. I document everything. I think everyone should. So the entire questions and answers for right now is in the document I just dropped in. The most important thing is for people to advocate for IAQ in schools. There's 5 key things: American Lung Association, JAMA, Lancet, U.S. Green Building Council, ASHRAE, and EPA. They're all linked there. Please, look through those after this call. Share them with stakeholders in your community. Share them with teachers. If you're a parent, you got to get the word out because, again, we don't have time. We're on a condensed time frame. So I appreciate it, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, folks, we are going to take another 5-minute break before we get to Ann Wallace, and I will see you here at 7:10 Eastern.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And, again, I wish this weren't necessary.
I wish that I can give you a hug, but here's a virtual hug.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know the first time we met in DC, I knew that you would be continuing on your path as you have. So I appreciate that. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to, help support your work and a lot of other people on the call. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone else shares and yeah, just not to be too personal, but in this quick break, I mean, when this started, my goal was to keep my kids, and now my kids have long COVID. So, I just took them to Kennedy Krieger, which is one of the only pediatric long COVID clinics in the country. Had to move mountains to get their insurance switched. There's just a shortage of knowledge. There's too much of this happening too quickly with not enough people caring. So, everything that we're all doing, I know it's hard. And, they were talking about like doctors stepping up, like we need to do even more. Everyone also knows like we're the last people that should be doing this. My doctor's like, you shouldn't be doing stressful things. I'm like, I'm going to like, I will definitely die sooner, but like, I'm not going to let this happen. So.
I think the whole world need to hear you, but also the whole world wouldn't understand how much we try to get the words out, and that means like crashing afterwards. Like we are trying our best to do what we really
That's all you can do
are
is do your
struggling to
best.
do.
Yeah, like we're all here doing our best. It's a whole hell of a lot more than people aren't doing shit. So that's all you can do is every day do your best. Be better today than yesterday. So I appreciate it.
You make such a great point about how exhausting it is, and I imagine for you, Adam, later today, I don't know what time zone you're on. You're in Maryland, so you're on Eastern time. Yeah, this is exhausting. Your brain, you're going to experience likely post-exertional malaise for today, and you may be well spent tomorrow. For your willingness to come and share your story, it takes so much courage and strength. You're a brave young man, and I just want to personally thank you for really bestowing us the honor of hearing your story.
Thank you. I love those, the mask backdrops. Like there's a story, like Julie knows, to every one of those people and many more people that aren't in that. So we need those stories to get out. So I appreciate it.
I'll send it to you.
Thank
You
you.
can use it for your
I
future
100% will.
presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll shut
Thank
up.
you, Adam.
Thank you.
Julie, I'm sending you a hug.
Thank you, Dr. Robbie. This is a really seriously tiring journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1,000 marathon,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll get there.
Well, Julie, I cannot tell you how much I admire you and your struggle. And I think I texted you that thing where 500 people had emoji reacted to some post on Facebook on Together America. And there was 21 laughs. And since it was 500, it was easy to do the math. And it's like, that is such a small percentage of laughs. And that it just seemed to me that I think people are starting to, see that things are rotten in Denmark and Mass Together America's got it going on. So I'm like so grateful you asked me on board or whatever.
Thank you, Sharon, for being
Thank you,
here.
Sharon. All right, we are going to pivot into our next section with Dr. Ann Wallace. She is the Poet Laureate Emeritus of Jersey City, New Jersey, and Professor of English at New Jersey City University. She serves as co-chair of the NCEG Communications Subcommittee, a longtime survivor of ovarian cancer, a woman with multiple sclerosis, and one of the nation's first long COVID patients. Wallace has lived and written through illness for more than 30 years. Her poetry collections include Days of Grace and Silence, a chronicle of COVID's long haul, and Counting by Sevens. Her essays have been published in Huffington Post, USA Today, and elsewhere, and she has made numerous media appearances as a long COVID patient, including on Good Morning America, CBS, NBC, and Fox News Radio. Her current projects include a memoir, Breathing Lessons, on living and writing through long COVID, as well as Keeping Room, a poetry collection on illness, grief, and resilience. Wallace holds a doctorate in English literature from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York and a master's degree in women's studies from Rutgers University. Her work is online at annwallacephd.com. So Ann, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate having you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful.
So our first question for you is, what is long COVID to you as a long COVID patient and a caretaker?
Well, you mentioned I'm a poet, so I'm going to start with a poem, if you'll bear with me. I have a poetry collection called Days of Grace and Silence, a chronicle of COVID's long haul, and I started writing it in 2020, spring 2020, when I became sick, and the month of April is National Poetry Month, and so I normally write a poem a day in the month of April. So I was very, very sick in April 2020. I'd been sick already a couple weeks, and I decided to write a poem a day. And I didn't know if I'd be able to do it because I was so sick, but I did. And then I thought I'd be better, and I wasn't. But I kept writing, not every day, but for this collection is 3 years of poems. Edited, not every poem. And so I wanted to read a poem that I wrote in spring 2023. It's called Passages. It's been decades since my body held a narrative clear and simple. It turned to poetry long ago when a refrain emerged, was repeated with life, interrupted once, then again and again. A poem always begins in the middle or someplace nearby, because truly, have you ever tried telling a poet to begin at the beginning? When my doctors ask me or my daughters how our illnesses began, oh, the poems we compose on paper-lined examination tables. Each one of us, a stanza braided to the other, with no beginning and no end. The poet in me dares not ask if we are always muddling around in the endless looping middle of this story, how might we ever write our way out? So that's my question, is how do we get our way out of this? And you asked what long COVID means to me. So of course, where to begin? I begin with a poem, but I will take you back to spring 2020. My daughter, my older daughter, who was 16 at the time, became sick, and I couldn't get her tested, as is the case of so many long haulers. But the other thing about it was that people said at the time, medical professionals said at the time, the kids didn't get COVID, that that their lungs, the surface of their lungs was too smooth for the spike proteins to attach to. And I'm looking at my daughter, and she's very sick, and I'm like, that does not sound right to me. And her pediatrician thought she had COVID, but she didn't qualify for a test. They called the state. I live in New Jersey, by the way. And the state had to approve every test at that time. And anyway, I couldn't get her tested. Then I became sick. I was eventually able to be tested. I tested positive. By then, she was out of the phase where she would have tested positive, but we know that that's what she had. I have MS. I also am an ovarian cancer survivor. Long time survivor of ovarian cancer. I had it in my 20s, and I have MS. And my doctor, I have a great medical team because I have these medical issues. I mean, I had a great medical team going into COVID, which was a blessing, because I had already assembled that care team over the course of decades. And my doctor said, well, because you have MS, it's probably going to take you, most people, they have COVID for 2 weeks. You'll probably take about a month to get better. A month came and went, and I was very, very sick. I was in and out of the hospital. They should have admitted me, but they didn't have room. And I didn't get better. And, 5 or 6 weeks in, I finally qualified for home oxygen, which was very difficult to secure. But again, I had a fantastic doctor, and they went to bat for me, and they fought for it. And I think it may have been a lifesaver. It certainly took the edge of terror off, because every night I was afraid to go to sleep. Sorry, bear with me. And I didn't get better, right? New symptoms kept appearing. And I wasn't able to work for about 2 years. And when I went back I'm a professor. When I went back to work in spring 2022, I was teaching virtually, and I would teach every other day. I'm a professor, so classes aren't every day, right? I would teach on one day online, and then I would crash the next day, and I'd teach the next day online, and it would take me like all weekend to recover before I'd have to do it again. And all the progress I'd made while I was on sick leave just went right out the window. And it was really, obviously we all know this. It was very hard. I had more than 90 symptoms. It was affecting nearly every system in my body. I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't, I had frozen shoulder. I couldn't even get dressed easily. And after that semester, it took me all summer to get back to where I'd been at the beginning of spring 2022 semester. And this is, we know this cycle. We know how this works. Post-exertional malaise. We know if we do too much, we get pushed back. I have POTS. I developed ME/CFS, and a form of something my doctor said it's like fibromyalgia, but not fibromyalgia. I don't exactly know what that meant, but all the pain and the inflammation was coursing through my body. At the same time, also my 16-year-old Molly, who'd been sick at the beginning, her trajectory of illness was very different. I didn't even realize it was long COVID for a while, because she was sick for, I don't know, a month or so, and then seemed to be better. And then in August of that year, so like 6 months out, she started to have shortness of breath and hypoxia. And then that got a little better. But then in April 2021, at month 13, she went back to school in person on a part-time basis. Like they broke the school into like two groups. Like some would go in 2 days and others would go in 2 days, and everybody had Fridays at home. She couldn't go into school 2 days in a row. She would go to school one day and then she couldn't get out of bed the next day. And then she was hypoxic, and she developed POTS and ME/CFS. And so that trajectory of her illness was very different. And it was very hard to see, to watch and to care for her. But I will say that because I'd already been dealing with long COVID, I was able to tap into some of my resources. But the thing is it didn't really help because nobody knew what the hell we were doing with long COVID. And so as much as I knew and I could identify it and I could get her diagnosed with POTS, it didn't really help much, other than I had an understanding of how long COVID operates. And I knew that, if she went to school one day and had to rest the next day, she needed a rest. Like that was essential. So I had that understanding. Then my second daughter, when she was 16, this is December 2022, she got infected with COVID. I don't know if she'd ever had it before. She may have been sick when Molly and I first were, but asymptomatically or minor symptoms perhaps. But in December 22, she became infected, and then she developed long COVID, and her illness was terrifying. And she missed the last year and a half of high school. And it's still hard to talk about. I write about it all the time, but it's hard to talk about because, as I said, it was terrifying. And what I mean by that is, and her symptoms were different. Her symptoms were a lot of GI issues. She could hardly eat, like really could hardly eat. And then was in excruciating pain when she did. And she had extraordinary ME/CFS. She just her and cognitive dysfunction. She had about a half hour of mental clarity a day for months. So I could talk with her. I'd be talking with her, not about anything strenuous, maybe dinner or something, right? And I could see her shutting down after 25 minutes or so. And I could see the lights sort of going off. And this is a kid who's bright, funny, articulate. And to see all of that gone, just, it's hard to imagine it until you see it. And she lost her language ability to a great extent. She couldn't find words, and she was in high school, and she was expected to write essays and read things. And I'm an English professor, and she's a writer, and she's, very articulate. And we just needed to plow through. And so I asked her a question, and I was like, she was taking dictation from her and helping her find the words because she couldn't. And obviously she had zero physical energy as well. And so any exertion, mental or physical, would just set her back. And she is in college now. She's a sophomore, and she's finally feeling good this year. So it's fall 2025, and she got sick in December 2022. And that's about how long it took me to feel more like myself. And it's hard. She was in college, last year, and she really struggled in her second semester. First semester wasn't so bad, but it compounded. So second semester was really, really challenging. And that's And it's really hard when you're a kid because you don't have much, and now she's an adult, but you don't have the grace of time when you're in school, right? Like you don't get to take sick leave when you're a kid as easily. And you're expected to meet these metrics. And if you're a 16-year-old, of course you want to graduate with your classmates and you want to move on to college. You want to be checking off all those marks because those are your, that's what defines you when you're young, is moving forward along with all your other peers. And it's really hard when you're chronically ill. And especially with an illness that is hard for people to wrap their heads around for some horrible reason that they can't. So that's a little bit what long COVID is for me. Oh, and I did want to, I want to say one more thing. I've mentioned I've had multiple illnesses in my life, and I am an English professor, and I'm a scholar, a literary scholar, and I've studied illnesses. I write about illness mainly because when I was in college, I had cancer, and one of the foundational texts for me is Audre Lorde's Cancer Journals, and I just wanted to read a couple lines from it, from the introduction. So Audre Lorde had breast cancer, in the late 70s, before there was a breast cancer movement the way we know it now. And there was a lot of stigmatization and silencing, and it was a shameful disease to have. It was kept invisible, even though a mastectomy was a very visible thing. Women were not supposed to show that, right? So this is one thing she writes, and it's something that has stayed with me for decades. I'm a post-mastectomy woman who believes our feelings need voice in order to be recognized, respected, and of use. I do not wish my anger and pain and fear about cancer to fossilize into yet another silence, nor to rob me of whatever strength can lie at the core of this experience, openly acknowledged and examined. For other women of all ages, colors, and sexual identities who recognize and impose silence about any area of our lives as a tool for separation and powerlessness. And for myself, I have tried to voice some of my feelings and thoughts about breast cancer. And I'll end it there, but that is something that I think about what she did, Audre Lorde, in breaking silence and the political usefulness of that, even when she was telling stories and speaking up for things that were painful and hard and intimate, and that she was exhausted, like we all are, and yet she did her work.
Yeah, thank you. What motivated you to become a long COVID patient representative at NIH RECOVER?
Well, I suppose that little blurb from Audre Lorde might also explain it, or be a bit of an answer to that. It's this idea of being of use, and that I come to long COVID from a place of privilege. I have a lot of knowledge of the medical of healthcare because of my decades of experience being a patient with serious illnesses. And I'm a white woman. I have excellent insurance. I have an excellent care team, and I have a voice, and I'm a writer. And so one of the first things I did when Molly became sick was I wrote a piece for Huffington Post in March 2020 about, my kid is sick and I can't get her tested, and this is not okay. And it wasn't about her. It was about the fact that if I have a sick kid in my house, then how many other sick children are there in other people's homes, right? So I need to make this public because this is not okay. And I want other people to know that if their child is feeling these things and experiencing these symptoms, that they need to be fighting for testing or getting their doctor to take them seriously. And then I've written other pieces about my own experience with long COVID. And so one of the things that I remember so acutely is when in winter 2021, I think it was Dr. Fauci announced that they'd identified, or they'd given long COVID a name, task, right? That was a huge moment for me, and I think for a lot of us, because it finally felt like, oh, they're finally recognizing it has a name now. It's not just being a long hauler or this post-viral. I mean, it is also those things, but the fact that when something is given a name, it's given a status. And then from there, Recover was founded and funded, and patients were brought in. And so it was really important for me to be part of that from the very beginning, and for patients to be part of Recover, because we have to listen to the patients and their caregivers. We're the people who are experiencing it. We know what it looks like. We're muddling through. We're trying to find care teams and find answers and find treatments and make our voices heard. And I know it was a little rocky at the beginning with Recover in terms of the patient reps and listening to patient reps, but I think there was a commitment from the start to make sure that worked out, that patients were integrated into the design of the study, into every committee and into every phase. And I'm really proud of Recover for that. It's not perfect, but patients are central to the work of Recover, and that's one of the reasons it's really important to me to be involved in it.
Thank you. What would your response be to someone who says that children need to train their immune systems by getting COVID-19?
Well, for one, what are they talking about? Train your immune systems. It's not as though you get COVID and it's a one and done, right? Like, many people are infected twice. My oldest daughter, Molly's had COVID 3 or 4 times, and it's never, ever easy. And it takes her a long time to recover from. And even in the New York Times, which despite the fact that they published a horrible article today about women in the workplace, they published this, which is going to be backwards, I think, for all of you, on this fall. Long COVID risk for children doubles after a second infection. So tell me what, this is what I would say to somebody, tell me what immunity does. Like, what is this immunity? There is no immunity. Anybody can get COVID again and again and again, and we know that. And it's worse each time. Your risk for long COVID increases, including for children. So that is just a kind of comment that I have to take a deep breath if somebody makes some kind of statement like that and not become immediately enraged. But that's what I feel inside, because I think we know better. We know this. And so having that, somebody who expresses that is willfully not following the science, not staying aware of what's actually happening, and not wanting to generally, and not willing to care about other people's risks, so even if it were to provide immunity for their child, what does it do for the rest of us? Like, don't play that Russian roulette with my health. You want to take it with yours, but don't do it to the rest of us. That's a profoundly selfish attitude for someone to take. So what would I say? I would be kinder in my response, and I would try to educate them. And I would, I would also say, I wish you were here in my house. Let me tell you what happened in my house. That with my kids getting COVID. Let me paint a picture for you. Let me read a poem for you. Because it's hard enough when you're an adult having long COVID, severe acute COVID and long COVID, but it's so much harder to watch it in your kids.
That was something that really struck me with just having you and Adam back to back, that both of you have long COVID and also have children with long COVID. And just that really, it hits home, because I think, like you said, sometimes you can convince yourself that you can go through the hardest thing possible but you never want that to happen to someone that you care about. It's just unfair.
Yeah. And especially when we don't have good care for people with long COVID and for kids with long COVID. We don't have the answers. And we don't even have an empathetic community in this country. Adam spoke about that. We're profoundly lacking in these skills and tools to be handling and responding to chronic illness. Yeah.
What are the most challenging things in getting your daughters the care they need for their long COVID?
That's it right there. Getting it, that is it. It's getting them their care, right? In the beginning, let's see, with my youngest daughter, Connie, right? So she became sick in December 2022 with COVID. And so we should have known better by then, right? We're nearly 3 years into the pandemic at that point. And when I took her to the pediatrician when she was not getting better after having COVID, like she got better from the acute, like she didn't have the fever anymore. And you know, that acute phase did phase out. But then she had crushing fatigue and pain and GI issues. And we went to her pediatrician and I said, well, I think this looks like long COVID. And the pediatrician said, oh, that doesn't really happen anymore. And I said, well, that's patently false. I'm on the NIH RECOVER initiative. And it does happen. And it happens in kids. And I think that's what this is. And then we go to a group practice and I never went to that pediatrician anymore and switched to a different doctor in that practice and from what I heard that doctor then left, not because of what she said to me, but I think there were other problems there. And then we went to a long COVID clinic in New Jersey. And the first appointment there I thought was excellent. I felt hope. And by when I say then, there's time, right? These things don't happen quickly. But we went there and they did a comprehensive exam and sent us to some specialists for to see if Connie had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and which isn't, you can never really definitively determine that anyway. But and then the one doctor who'd been assigned to her there kind of got fed up that she wasn't getting better. And she said, and I said this in a recover meeting today, she said, well, your daughter's she said this to my daughter's therapist. She's using her fatigue as a crutch. And the therapist pushed right back at her, thank God. I mean, there's a reason this was her therapist. She's good. And then the therapist wrote to me and said, this is a disqualifying, this disqualifies her from her care team, this statement that she made, because she does not understand what your daughter's going through. And I agreed. And I already felt that way. I thought, we're not going back, because the other thing that this doctor wanted was her to go to an inpatient facility where they get the kids up at 7 a.m. and they're active all day. And I knew in my gut that if she went there, it could kill her, like could literally kill her or permanently disable her in a way that she wasn't at the moment, because we all know the damage that trying to be too physically active or cognitively active does on kids, and on any of us, sorry, not just kids. We know this. And that doctor had already said to us also, if she doesn't do that, she laid out an ultimatum. She has to go to that facility over the summer, because I'm not writing any more notes for her to miss school. She has to be back in school come September. And thank goodness I found another long COVID clinic to take her to. And the doctor there, it was night and day. That doctor was phenomenal. And I also say, like, my daughter really learned to advocate for herself too. And that's kind of a beautiful thing, I'll say. It's a little silver lining is that she knows how to speak up for her own health. And that when that first doctor said long COVID doesn't really happen anymore, she spoke right back too. and it's sad that young people need to learn this, but they do, unfortunately. So finding care providers who are responsible and don't do harm has been one of the hardest, most challenging things of this process. And also just finding them in general, because every time the new doctor would send us to, she had a huge system of doctors to refer us to. And they were all very good, but each time it would take a month, 2 months, 3 months to get an appointment with those doctors. And as we all know, you go for testing and the tests come back normal. And we experienced that so many times that that was also just very frustrating. But I also knew to expect that. I knew, again, because of my own experience, I knew that, we're going to go to the neurologist. They're going to test to see if she's having seizures, which I'm glad they tested for, but she wasn't having seizures, thank goodness. And I knew that these tests were most likely going to come back clear. Again, thank goodness that they did. I'm glad. But that I think for some other people, other parents, they might have thought then negative tests means healthy kid. And that's not what that means. It means we're just not able to pinpoint what the mechanisms are that's causing this illness. And we're ruling things out. And that's also super important, right? Like we need to rule some of these things out. But negative tests is not a sign of a bill of health, right? So
I was going to say, I just felt every single chronic illness person in this group just go, oh, negative test, huh?
Right. You're good to go.
Yeah. We've eliminated one possible thing out of any millions of other options.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Wallace, we are out of time, but I want to thank you so very much for your time spent with us and your testimony. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, folks, we are going to pivot. Our next speaker is Becky Ansira Robinson. She is a resilient founding member of MaskTogetherAmerica, driven by her personal journey with long COVID since June 2020. During her recovery from a spinal surgery after a car accident, she was exposed to COVID while attending cognitive therapy. Since she was in the middle of a lawsuit, it was mandatory for her to attend the group therapy at a time when most parts of the US were under lockdown. Her surgical mask didn't protect her from the airborne virus, which gave her a wide range of chronic conditions that damaged her organ systems. Becky also infected her cat and her daughter, who also developed long COVID. As a steadfast advocate for public health, Becky has tirelessly championed the usage of high-quality masks and proactive mitigation measures to protect communities from the ongoing impacts of COVID-19. Her unwavering commitment to raising awareness about long COVID stems from lived experience, fueling her mission to educate and empower others. Despite her endless struggle to recover, she volunteered as a producer for Mask Together America, teaming up with founder Julie Lamb in making PSAs for the organization's social media campaign when masking and vaccination were mandatory. Becky also joined the International Long COVID Awareness Group and helped lead the effort in dedicating March 15th as Long COVID Awareness Day. In addition, Becky co-hosts nightly Twitter X Spaces with Dr. Joe Eastman to provide a virtual home for the long COVID community, where advocates share updates, amplify science, support each other emotionally, and remind one another that they are not alone. As a member of the World Health Network, Becky has pioneered initiatives to promote safety and support, blending compassion with action. Her masked portrait symbolizes both her personal resilience and her call for collective responsibility in safeguarding public health. So thank you, Becky. Thank you for being here with us tonight. So Becky, first question, what is long COVID to you as a long COVID patient and a caretaker?
Okay. Before I answer that, just so you know what we do in our lives, I was just in the ER. I overdid myself. And by overdoing myself, that means I was handing candy to trick-or-treaters. The following day, I fell ill. And I knew I was going to exhaust myself. So I just got out of the hospital. I had to go to the hospital on Saturday night, and I was there for 4 days, and with pneumonia and glass opacities in my lungs and whatnot. But because the test was negative, well, then it was, I definitely didn't have COVID. And the ironic part about all of this is this is one of my biggest frustrations, is that, gosh, like you said, listen to your patients. Every once in a while, we might make sense. We might. I got some nasal spray, and it's antiviral. I sprayed it up my nose before I went, sprayed the stuff in my throat, and did all of the little measures that we do before we go somewhere that's, compromising. So I did that, and then the surgeon or doctor on call, I said, listen, you guys just swabbed my nose. Do you think that maybe it's not going to be accurate? Because I just sprayed antiviral up both sides of my nose. Huh? What's that? And so I had to take it out of my purse, show him what it was. Never seen this before. And discarded. He's like, shouldn't be a problem. I asked a nurse, I asked a phlebotomist, everyone there, and they dismissed me. And in a way that we all know, in that gaslighting way, like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Stop telling the experts how to do their job. And I sense that. And hey, most of us, we just retreat. What choice do we have? I mean, we want care. And so it's been a really long couple of days. And just side note, before I get into that, some of us are taking off-label meds here and there. We're fortunate enough to have found doctors that will try different things. I asked the nurse for telling her my meds at night, and I said, okay, so one of my meds, I need Truvada. And she's like, huh? Truvada? Why you need that? And I'm like, well, I need it. It's part of my regimen. I didn't want to go into it. My lungs were burning and I felt like shit. And I was wearing a long COVID awareness t-shirt. I mean, could not have been more clear. And of course I did that intentionally. She goes, finds out, doctor ends up approving it. She walks back in. She's like, okay, I got you your Truvada, but what condition is it that you say you have? So I'm still kind of reeling off of this whole visit. It was really hard. My daughter was extremely scared, especially because she knows that at one time before I was getting experimental medication, she knew that mom was not going to be here. And that was pretty much a guarantee. My doctor was finding end-of-life care. It has been a nightmare. Long COVID, to me, it's a thief. It stole my body's strength, my senses, my bank account, my daughter's mind, her empathy. I feel like I'm living with a stranger, and I know you get it, Anne. I know you do. We were relatively living like just a normal life, very cookie cutter. And I loved it. I loved having the 2 dogs, 1 cat, and well, the cat ends up dying from COVID, and that was really rough because the guilt. We don't talk about this very much, but survivor guilt. And the survivor guilt, I mean, I brought it home, and I knew when I got it. I mean, I knew the very moment I got it. The guy sitting in my cognitive rehab across the table from me looked identical to Patrick Dempsey in the movie Outbreak. I mean, he was red and sweating and just looked like he was emitting all kinds of pathogens and whatnot. So I told the owner, hey, listen, please just for me. I have to be here, please. And he's like, it's not, no mandate in place. Sorry. I try to let go, but of course I, hate this man forever. And then I don't hold it against the kid because we were in there with brain injuries. And so I know that he didn't think about it. He didn't know it wasn't his fault. And I think that's also where we're failing, where we have a big wall between us and our mission. And that is that people are not informed. They don't know. I mean, I don't know anybody who sits there in their spare time and, hey, I want to know what the latest is going on with that COVID. Are car wrecks increasing? I wonder about that plane accident. Did it have anything to do? Nobody does that. Even our community, a lot of them don't do that. So I really offer a lot of grace. I didn't offer a lot of grace in the beginning. In the beginning, of course, I hated everyone who wasn't masking. I was up against resistance, as everybody here knows. The biggest thing is the gaslighting we say in one hand, but it's not even the gaslighting. It's the fact that you are flat out being called a liar. You are a liar, and you know damn straight that you're not. I'm living it. I know. I got a second infection, and this was before people were getting second infections. I was thrown under the bus. There's no way. You can't get a second infection. Oh my God, you just want to get attention. Blah, 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 blah. On and on. And my family abandoned me. They said that I just wanted to make myself relevant. That was really hard. And I kept on. I'm like, you know what? This is my truth. This is my truth. And I see what happened to my daughter. She's not a big fan of me sharing this, but it is part of our story, and it's what motivates me every day. I ended up getting long COVID to me. Every symptom you can possibly imagine, like the really bad ones, I got those. All my teeth fell out. I had to get them all replaced. I mean, they're pretty now, but that was a nice small fortune. And this is one of the most expensive illnesses. This is one of the loneliest illnesses. You are abandoned, you're isolated, and there's nothing it doesn't affect. Nothing. I mean, from your hair to your toenails, all of it. I've lost hair. I've had fungus on my toes. I mean, I've had plantar warts. I mean, you name it, I've had it. I've had rashes where I had ulcers, literally bleeding ulcers all over my skin. So I got teeth falling out, ulcers all over the place, going to a dermatologist, and he's telling me that I was doing that to myself. And I'm like, how did I do that on the back of my legs and on my back? I actually have video recordings of him saying this because it was, I knew what I was in for. And my doctor was real big on, it just so happened that my doctor, family doctor, was one of the frontline doctors with the cure, and they're going to save everyone. Well, that was him, and he was the only one treating it. And I said, all right, a lot of people don't like your treatment, but you're the only one offering one. So go ahead and give it to me, as long as you throw in dexamethasone, CBD, melatonin, all of these things that I saw that worked in other countries. And Israel seemed to be really on top of things at that time. And I just became like the crazy researcher. And what was nice about it is that I had a severe traumatic brain injury, and that is what did all the healing. That is absolutely how I healed. I'm not healed completely, obviously, but all of that research, all of those connections I put together, all of the cognitive rehab I did meant nothing. It did nothing for me. But putting this together, trying to save your daughter's life and your life, I mean, there's a magic to the research, and there's kind of a high. I know that you all know this high. Being right there live, seeing the news unfold as it happens. The moment it comes out, the moment a study comes out and gives you hope, just a little bit. And it could be a revival of the metformin study. It could be, a revival of valciclovir or something. The exercise studies don't do much for me, but you know how it is. Just learning that, because right now we're in the same boat as many of the healthcare workers, and being uninformed, I think I would say it was ignorance, and now I don't say that. It's just, I think we failed. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but this goes with my second question. I feel like we failed from the bottom up. That we failed in kindergarten. That's where we learned how to wash our hands. Why are we having to reteach that at 50, 70 years old? Why? Did you not learn that? I mean, I know we did. I was a school teacher. And one of my biggest arguments, and I spoke to the school board, I said, you know what? All of your science teachers right now, any one of them that doesn't have a mask on has no business teaching the children. None. They will say wear it for the lab, because there might be gas or something, but not for a bioweapon. Really? And they didn't like that. I mean, my approach was really not. It was a much different approach than I would take now. Getting a diagnosis was not necessarily hard, because I think my doctor was very excited about diagnosing us because we were among the first. And so that way he could exploit it for all that it was worth. And when I started getting sicker, he started parsing me out to different doctors. And people don't get it. They don't understand that we don't have an all-encompassing doctor anymore. And this was the intent of our long COVID clinics, which failed miserably. I mean, there might be one or two, I just don't know about it. But I had dermatologist, rheumatologist, endocrinologist, pulmonologist, and psychologist, psychiatrist. That's expensive, and it's taxing on your energy. How can you do that? How do you fight an illness, take care of your sick daughter, and go to all of these medical appointments and balance it with a brain injury? And the world does not bend for a brain injury. They don't bend for an illness that you cannot see. They just don't. It's a really hard lesson, and I apologize to every one of my friends with chronic illness, because I never understood. I never fully understood. And I don't think anybody, and we've said this in our Twitter spaces, but everyone has confessed, nobody will ever, ever understand unless they're in our shoes, because this is an illness. And I'm not demeaning any other illness. This is an illness that nobody knows anything about. As the news comes out, it's the same time you and the doctors are all finding out. And yes, like somebody typed invisible disability, and it is. But nobody makes concessions for that. Why do I need a wheelchair? I look fine. And then there was a time that I could only crawl. And it's humbling. This is humbling. But the barriers that we have to go up against, luckily now it's a little bit better. I see like waves 2, 3, and 4 not having, they're still going through hell, but just not as much resistance, because little by little, and I do see, on a positive note, I do see some change in the past couple months. People are starting to recognize, people are starting to identify long COVID. Now, they're not connecting the dots. They're definitely not connecting the dots. but they're starting to talk about it. I mean, like you said, seeing on Julie's post, hundreds of thousands of posts on all kinds of posts that normally we would get hate galore. I mean, vitriol, and not anymore. You have, the little trolls, but now to see it, it's a high. It's cool to go on Instagram and see that there's like 700 likes on the latest forecast for SARS. I mean, that's crazy. She did something. She made a movement, and well, we all did. We've all played a role in this movement, and it's so gratifying. It's what I live for, and I would advocate from the grave, absolutely from the grave. And a lot of us who have been doing this, and I've been doing it in conjunction with other peers, there are some that worked themselves to death before Long COVID Awareness Day, and like one of them had a stroke and kept on working. I mean, people don't get it, but that's how convicted we are. I mean, we are married to the cause. Side note, since this is about caretaking and my daughter, this just happened a week ago. My house caught on fire 2 years ago, and this was in the middle of me being sick. House catches fire. My daughter and I are displaced, lost everything. Husband left, took the dog, and he couldn't handle being a caregiver. And you know what? I don't resent him for it, because being a caregiver is hard. That takes energy. He didn't have it, and better for me to get out then. I don't think caregivers get enough credit. I don't think they get enough support, because as a patient, they're living it too. They just may not feel the pain of it, but they're living it too, right there next to you. They're the ones picking up your prescriptions. They're the one watching you cry and curl up in a ball and turn off all of the lights, and turn off all of the sound, and you're on the floor in the fetal position, and they're trying to calm you down and take care of you and accommodate your needs, and they don't know how. That's a really shitty, hard position to be in. Okay, back to last week. So anyways, all of this is happening. My daughter and I, we lost everything, all of our personal belongings. And so put pictures and videos are everything to me. And I lost all of them. And with a brain injury, I couldn't quite recall everything. And she certainly could not. So I found amongst some garbage in the garage a few flash drives. I put them in, and she's sitting at her desk behind me, and I start crying happy tears. All of these memories just came flooding back. I could not believe that I found these flash drives. It was amazing, and I can hear her little voice, Mama, doing whatever. And I say, turn around, look, do you remember this? And she got really quiet. And she sat there and listened to me giddy and crying happy tears for a while. And then she stood up and walked out. And I'm like, well, where are you going? She's like, listen, I see this is really happy for you. It's not happy for me. I don't remember any of those memories. I don't remember any of them. I don't connect. I see that that's me as a kid. I don't have any relationship to any of those videos. And it just makes me sad. It's a reminder that I can't remember my childhood. When I'm trying to explain in 2020 what happened to my daughter, and doctors didn't want to believe it, but they diagnosed her with cognitive decline, aka dementia. And it was ugly. Everybody in the world said I was exploiting my daughter. And I'm like, it's not about that. It is about the bigger picture. If we don't get this information out there, this is going to happen to other mothers and fathers. This is not sustainable. I mean, if this is going to happen across the population because we're too stubborn to actually take them on, like, where's the empathy, guys? So it was that was my big mission. And she hasn't gotten any better. She's gotten worse. And we have tried everything, cognitive rehab for 2 months, ketamine even. We just finished a course of 8 weeks of TMS. You can't bring that back. And trying to make a doctor understand that it's not brain damage. I mean, it is, but they wanted to blame it on a car wreck from a million years ago. And I'm like, well, but it's not. It's this. We've got a scan before and we have a scan after. It is the illness. If meningitis can do this to the brain, and why can't this? And I don't know why it was so far-fetched for people to understand that a virus is acting like a virus. How odd, how peculiar. HPV that killed my sister. And it's, so, I mean, I have a little more knowledge on that, like you. But I didn't get it, that it seems so obvious and obvious to me, not obvious. I don't know why people were so resistant to believe it, that this could actually happen, other than it's just scary as hell. And they had no control over it. I think that that's what this is all about. It's not about the vaccine. It's about control. How much control do I have in this whole mess to make myself get through the day? To know that it's really not that big of a deal if my kid gets infected again. It's really not a big deal. Imagine the day that these parents and everybody wakes up and says, oh, shit, I've been getting my kid, all those warnings, they were real. I heard them. I thought it was outrageous, but I've been sending my kid to school every day and letting him get infected over and over and over. And half the time not even taking him to a doctor because I just say it's the flu. Imagine how many asymptomatic infections there are. Imagine how many went undetected simply because we know that the tests are shit. And now what are you going to do? The tests are $25 a piece. And who's going to do that? I mean, it's such well, you're going to order it on Amazon for $25. It's going to arrive 3 days from now. And by then you've already infected your whole family and the checker at the grocery store and your nail lady. So we can't go on like this. It's just not, it's not something we can do. I'll never get my daughter back. And I know that. She actually has a friend out here helping me with a few favors. And I've had to talk with her about, because she's like, Gianna's not the same. It's like she has no empathy. And so I've had to sit down, and this is something I never thought, and I've never heard anyone talk about it, but I never thought I would do it. We sat down and had a heart to heart, and I said, listen, when somebody gets this illness or has a brain injury, I know you're 20 and this is really a big concept. They change. They're not the friend you knew before, but that doesn't mean that they're not your friend. You know, they're going to change, and you're going to either embrace the new her and help her evolve, or, you know, slowly drift away. Don't, you know, you've got to, luckily she's willing to go through this ride with us. And that's one friend, but the rest of them are not. I mean, she says I'm the odd one out. So I know I ramble, but it's just all of this is one big train of thought that haunts me day in, day out, because I don't talk about it. I hold spaces on Twitter, and every night, well, 4 nights a week, and everybody is constantly talking about their stories and what's going on. Well, I don't want to repeat my story. I don't want to do it over and over, not because I have a problem sharing it, but it's long, it's sordid, and it's almost unbelievable. Like, no one wants to believe, oh yeah, the two of you got COVID. Oh, your house burnt down. Oh, you lived in a hotel. Oh, your dog, your cat died. Da 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 da. No one wants to believe that. And why I'm here and why I have some kind, to me, it's an act of God, because I have no other reason to say why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here, why I made it. But I did, and I'm going to do something with that. I mean, I didn't do this for nothing. And if I gave up now, then I will have wasted the past 6 years. It would just be garbage. And so I will not stop at all. And I'm sorry, you can go on to the next question. I kind of answered the next question.
Well, we are actually almost out of time.
Oh, okay.
But thank you so very much. I think you got a lot of comments in the chat about how important your story is and how it's just really necessary to hear these things. And I think everyone's really feeling for you, feeling with you, and we're just appreciative of you for sharing it with us and for being part of this community and for being an advocate. And, gosh, we've had some great people on tonight, you guys. Like, these are some good stories and these are some hard things. And it is a tiny bit easier to do hard things when you have other people with you who are going through these hard things. So just thank you, Becky. And thank
You're
you
welcome.
to
If I
everyone.
just side
Yeah.
note, it asked about things that parents and people can do. I'm big on grassroots. So print out flyers. I go to the doctor's offices and I throw them inside the magazines at the doctors. If I have to go to the bathroom, I tape it to the back of the bathroom door. A library, stick them in the books. And anywhere, cork board at Starbucks, anywhere you can do it. And frankly, had I thought about it earlier, I would have taped a little info, something or other on my trick or treat candy. In the future, I will, because it's just a little business card with just a few little facts, maybe a Q code, knowing nobody's going to scan it, but still, just little by little, getting the facts and out there is very important. So, okay, that's all I wanted to say is just we've got to do this together.
Yeah. And thank you for being part of that together.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Julie. Julie has a little closing speech that she's going to give when you are ready, Julie.
I just want to say to all of you, I'm so grateful that you're here and you make me feel so much less alone. This is truly like you ride this all by yourself. No one can help you. I want to say thank you to Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for being here with us, be our host. Thank you, Evan Sachs, Kathleen Downs, and Dr. Tamargo for volunteering to create this powerful forum to support long COVID patients around the world. And all of us speakers are heroes. It's really a privilege to be your colleagues in this fight against the erasure of long COVID. And I want to tell Dr. Oz, COVID has not passed. People develop long COVID from Omicron variants too. Only they are getting dismissed by their doctors and science researchers just because the symptoms have shifted. And now people are not losing their taste and smell, but COVID is causing organ damage, cardiovascular damage, autoimmunity, immune dysfunction, viral persistence, dysautonomia, ME/CFS, and many other debilitating conditions. And we need to let our government know people pass out because of nerve and autonomic dysfunction triggered by COVID. And I'm speaking based on my own experience and from interviewing long COVID patients. With people not testing and lack of biomarkers, long COVID is getting buried. Patients are unable to get diagnosed. and because their symptoms do not score enough points in the index, even when they are disabled. Our government is ignoring these persistent illness from recent COVID strains, and that contribute to the rise in chronic illness in all age groups. They say the pandemic's over and cut funding for COVID response, and cutting research funding makes the task to find targeted treatments and sterilizing vaccines impossible. But we must not give up. We advocate for prevention together. We advocate for government funding together, and we have to take action. Thank you so much for all of you for supporting this movement. I am in pain, but I guess you make me feel so much better.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you all for being here tonight. This webinar was recorded, and we will share the recording on YouTube and Facebook after Julie edits it, which may take a few days. So please, in the meantime, follow us on Instagram. We are at instagram.com/MaskTogetherAmerica. I put all of our links in the chat. Instagram, MaskTogetherAmerica, Facebook, MaskTogetherAmerica. We are on Threads at MaskTogetherAmerica, Blue Sky, Together We Mask, and X, Together We Mask. We also have some links to our Long COVID Defense Guide, Long COVID Resources, a Long COVID Health Justice poll from March 15th, and an article on our mask chart, which shows, N95s are recommended. So all of those resources are available at MaskTogetherAmerica.org. Again, all of those links are in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here. Please get involved with us, follow us, come to more webinars, volunteer with us if you have the time and capacity. And thank you for your energy, and thank you for being here tonight.
Good night.
We can